Hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach podcast. And I am here with yet another high demand coach. It is the one, the only David VanderJagt. Now, David has over 15 years of experience structuring, developing, and managing high-performing B2B and B2C revenue teams that are capable of scaled and sustained growth. After years of consistently exceeding sales quotas, he turned his passions and experiences across the revenue value chain toward helping other organizations architect growth strategies that position his clients' marketing, sales, and customer success teams to win, while enabling company ownership to achieve their exit goals as well. His direct and transparent management style revolves around the firm belief that a quality customer experience is the best driver of scalable, profitable, and long-term business growth and stability. Well, David, I'm so excited to have you here. Just love getting ready for this episode. I've got all kinds of questions for you. Before we get to any of that, though, I'd love to just hear, what would you say is some of the most important work that you and your firm are doing for your clients?
Yeah, for my clients, Scott, most of them are under $10 million in revenue, and there's so much unpredictability that happens, as you're trying to scale up. I mean, every milestone obviously is critical, but trying to get to $10 million, I mean, really what you're spending a lot of time, especially in that maybe $2 to $10 million kind of growth phase, is finding things that are repeatable, predictable, scalable, right? Things that you can that take some of the ambiguity and therefore the risk and inconsistencies out of your business. So the most important thing that we're doing is as we start to build playbooks for them, the focus is always on, is this predictable? Can it be repeatable? As we consider, for example, bringing on another salesperson, can they mimic or basically follow this playbook and see similar results? So the biggest thing that we do for our clients is we help them sleep better at night, because they know that how their capital is being invested into their business is into things that are, again, repeatable, predictable, and scalable.
So I noticed from your site that you guys are not, wouldn't necessarily bill yourselves as consultants or fractional executives, but rather growth architects. So tell me, what is a growth architect and why is that so important?
Yeah, so a lot of companies, again, that are in that earlier stage companies, probably post-product market fit, but getting ready to scale up, they are, they're still trying to figure out, like, what should we spend our time on? What should we spend activities on? What should we spend our, limited capital, defined as dollars, people, and time? And so that getting out of that kind of early stage, where you're like, where do we spend time to do these? Like, where do we invest this limited capital in terms of these types of daily activities? That's really where we hang our hat. So to get to that point, we really need to reverse engineer how the company got to this place, understand what's good, or typically like what's profitable revenue. So we're looking at everything as we deconstruct their kind of the revenue engine. We're looking at, how is marketing responsible for for some level of revenue attribution? Where is sales responsible? How is that being shared today? If you have a post-sales account management or customer success group, what's their accountability and responsibilities around customer retention, customer activation, expansion, right? So basically anybody that in those marketing, sales, or CS functions that touches revenue creation, growth, or expansion, the first thing we need to do is just dig in and understand what are the things that you've consistently done that take you down this path of profitability, and then how do we start to say many times like no to a lot of the other things that really largely are distractions. So what our clients really appreciate with the work that we do is we take a lot of like spray and pray, and we start to condense things down into a very focused approach. It's data backed. Again, it's predictable. It's profitable, right? And it's things that we know that we've proven we have proficiency in delivering over and over and over again. So a lot of that value is figuring out what's good and what can we build upon, and how do we start to maybe say no or not yet to some of these other opportunities that present themselves but are largely distractions while we're trying to scale up.
It's such an important skill set. I've found that the reason why it's so hard is because when we start off, your ability to say no is not nearly as important as your ability to say yes. right? In those early days, you kind of, to an extent, and I'm exaggerating, but you say yes to whatever you can, and then you find a way of making it work, right? When you've got to get enough to make payroll, it doesn't really matter if it's like an ideal fit. And again, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but we get really good at saying yes, and then come hell or high water, we're going to find a way of making it happen. And then we do more of that, and we do more of that, and we never really develop the skill of saying no. And well, I think what you guys do, and an important part of this process, and really a big difference between that kind of natural growth early on and scalability, is that ability to say no.
Yeah.
So one of the things that as long as I was getting ready for this episode, was a real strong focus on data and structure. And I'm wondering, the world you work in isn't necessarily known for its data and structure, right? Entrepreneurs are not necessarily the biggest spreadsheet heroes, if you will. So one, how do you, why is that so important? Let's start there. Why is it so important?
Yeah. So the emphasis on data, and you're right, while data will always be very important, survival is typically the most important thing, especially in those early days. My hope is typically that the entrepreneur while they're in survival mode, they're still doing some level of due diligence around, hey, I know I need to have some moderate amount of data. Maybe it's not as thorough. Maybe the CRM isn't as clean and as updated as it should be. Perhaps there's some data, pieces that are maybe I know aren't completely dialed in. But hopefully, as you're starting to grow, and you're getting out of product market fit stage, and you're starting to grow into maybe 1, 2, 3 million in revenue annually, you're starting to assemble some amount of data, right? And the reason that that's so critically important to somebody that is more of a growth architect like myself is because I'm trying to understand, again, how can I look back at what you've done thus far, like your marketing processes, your sales process, handoffs between these functions, and start to just understand, if I could start to look at customer segmentation, if I start to look at customer breakdown of, where do these customers come from? How long have they been customers? We start to think about the unit economics of the business. How much does it take to acquire a customer, our customer acquisition costs? And then what are some of our early indicators around payback periods? Because, things like LTV, especially for an early stage company that's only been around for a couple of years, are hard to develop. But some of these are just really critical metrics. And if I start to look at your customer, your audiences, right, or your ideal customer profiles as different segments, I can start to look at, well, what did it take to acquire a customer in this segment? And then how long, what's the average value of that customer, like the annual contract value? And then how long do we retain those customers, and at what rate? And you can start to kind of like look at these different storylines that are developing in your business for what you do, whom you do it for, and how much you retain those customers through the impact that you're hopefully continuing to have on their business. And so a lot of that, we could take guesses and sometimes gut level instinct, which will serve you well often, and is kind of what you need to lean into in the very, very early stages of the company. What we want to do is get to that next kind of growth at the stage, or that evolution of, okay, that's been great that we've been able to just move quickly, gut level, say yes to everything. But now as we start to emerge out of that kind of early stage product market fit, I've loosely defined that as kind of 0 to maybe 1 million to 3 million, something like that. We need to start shifting into, okay, how do we do things that are process oriented, that are, again, like I said, predictable, like scalable, like we know that this works, right? And we've seen it because we have our data that has shown us over here that it supports, this particular set of activities that we're driving towards. So, it's a tough thing. And oftentimes a lot of the clients and entrepreneurs that I work with, one of the hardest things to them is to say no. You see, this is a good example of this, where you have maybe multiple executives that are wearing the sales hat, and it's hard to start to get people into their swim lanes, right? And their zone of genius and their zone of competency. But oftentimes, what we do as growth architects is to say, look, guys, you best serve your organization, your company, and taking you toward whatever that vision is by playing the role where your competencies and your expertise shines through. And you actually do a bit of a disservice to the company as you start to try to wear too many hats, doing too many things at one time. Not an advocate for like just going and building out a bloated org structure, but let's start to be a little bit more, deliberate and intentional and narrow in terms of what you do and how that adds value to the company. Oftentimes, what that ultimately means, getting back around to the question, is starting to say no, or starting to delegate or shift responsibilities within the team to where they need to go. And so I've got a client right now that's been one of the biggest keys to their success. They're probably going to double in growth this year, is just getting the executive team, in their zone of competency. So the CEO is still our main salesperson, but getting our CMO just more specifically focused on marketing, and then our CIO kind of more focused on product, project management, innovation, those types of things.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the challenges with data is that it takes time, at least more time than the golden gut, right? Like than that instinctual, let's just make a decision and go. How do you help your clients justify the time that it takes to really accumulate and vet good data?
Yeah. Well, I mean, nobody wants to spend time doing data entry, nor is usually spending time on extensive data entry a good use of the time, especially when it's a small team, especially when oftentimes it's executives that are still executing, while they're also, kind of carrying their C-level title. So, leveraging tools, this I think is where technology, even AI, and things like that start to play a role in helping, because, as things continue to evolve, I mean, for sure, we can build our processes, and there's levels of automation. I'll talk specifically about the CRM, right, where we're using automation to just prompt and make sure that we're getting the right data entry at the right points in time. For example, as marketing hands off to sales as a qualified lead, as sales starts to take that deal through the pipeline to close, and whatever information we need to download to the team in terms of transitioning, that service or product to fulfillment and delivery afterward. So I think that, leverage your technology, leverage automation, take your business processes and mimic that into your technology solutions, so that it just starts to keep some kind of coherence and consistency in terms of data. And then look for places where, especially if you're hearing from folks like, man, this got to be a faster way to do this. For example, one of my clients, an executive that's still leading sales, is, he sends a lot of follow-up emails. And so starting to leverage things like, text replacement, or in HubSpot, it's called snippets, and different CRM automations, it's called different things, and building in personalization tokens that allow him to be a lot faster and more nimble, because, he's also an executive at this company that's also still leading sales, as we're getting ready to start to hire our first salesperson and build out that team. But, leverage things that make him just, that even sometimes 1% faster, right? Those things kind of compound on themselves. Look for them, look for the squeaky wheel, when you're hearing like, hey, this is just taking too long, and find out how to make things just, quicker, cleaner, automated. This is where I think one of the places where leveraging technology has had a great effect, and frankly will continue even having more of a positive effect. The ultimate result here being you have good data, you have consistency in that data, and you can make actionable, insightful decisions from that data.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's a little awkward at first, and it's a little hard to do, and it takes extra time, but the more you do it, the more it starts to accumulate, and it just becomes second nature. Fascinating transformation, a very, very important one. I'm wondering, we've got a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, leaders in entrepreneurial organizations who listen to this podcast. And if you were to say, what is the biggest secret that you wish wasn't a secret at all? What's that one thing you wish every one of them watching or listening today knew?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about it today, so I'll just call it out specifically. It's that as you get to growth inflection points, the answers for where you should lean in more, where you should delegate more capital, again, in terms of people, time, and dollars, the answers largely lie in your data. So first of all, don't ignore data. Make sure that you're starting to develop some level of competency and consistency around how you're aggregating and producing sort of data that helps, because as you're starting to look at where we need to go and where our largest opportunities are going forward, ultimately the secret that shouldn't be a secret is that those answers lie in that data. So make sure you're taking that part of your business seriously. It's going to help you be more predictable. It's going to help you scale up faster. It's going to help the inputs, are this, then outputs should equal that. And so the thing that I always say is look at, like, your data tells the story about where your growth opportunities are at eventually post product market fit, much more clearer, and with a much higher hit rate and level of consistency than gut level feel, and just all out, just grunt and build it out, work hard. I mean, obviously you have to do those things, but start to look at how you can get better. And the answer, the secret, oftentimes does lie in your data.
Yeah, it's so true. And there's so much of it, just inertia and momentum. Say, just drive it through, just drive it through. But the moment that you can get all of that energy and point it in the right direction is where things really start to take off. Well, masterful episode, David. And there's some folks listening to this that think this is exactly what we needed. Where's this guy been all our lives? How can they find out more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Dave VanderJagt. Email address is dave@vanderjagtcro.com. Those are probably the two best places to get me, and I would love to hear from folks. Love to engage. I'm passionate about this. This is what my career's been building to for a long time. So love helping organizations, working with entrepreneurs, figuring out their growth plan. But love to engage through email or LinkedIn. Best ways.
It's fantastic. Well, David, thank you so much. Appreciate you being on the show here today. And for those of you watching and listening, your time and attention mean the world to us. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I know I did, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.